Can you imagine a moment that literally changes the world? I'm talking about a single speech that launches a way of life, a philosophy that millions and millions of people will follow for the next 2,500 years. Well, today, we're going right back to that exact moment, the Buddha's very first sermon, right after he achieved enlightenment.
Okay, so let's get into it. Our guide for this whole explainer is the Sutra of Turning the Dharma Wheel itself. We're going straight to the source, this ancient text, to really understand the teaching that kicked everything off. So picture the scene. It's simple, but it's totally iconic. We're in Benares, in this quiet little grove called Deer Park, and this is the spot where the Buddha, newly awakened, decides to give his very first teaching.
So how does a world-changing sermon even begin? Well, it's not with a simple, "Hello." It starts with something way more mystical, a sign that something truly profound is about to go down.
According to this text, a natural Dharma wheel just appears out of thin air. It flies over to the Buddha and starts turning, right there in front of him. Now, this isn't just some random object. It's a huge symbol. It represents the truth of reality, the cosmic law, and it's being set into motion for the very first time.
And then the Buddha actually speaks to this celestial wheel. He reaches out, touches it, and says, "Stop. My suffering from countless eons is ended. The cycle of rebirth is broken." So right from the jump, he's establishing the core promise of everything he's about to teach. There is a way to definitively end suffering.
But before he gives the solution, the Buddha first lays out the problem. He points out these two really common, but totally flawed, ways of living that he himself had already tried and rejected.
So the Buddha points to two dead ends he knew really well. On one side, you have indulgence, just chasing every sensual pleasure. The text calls it nianzai tanyu. Then on the complete opposite side, you've got extreme self-mortification, a life of really harsh, painful denial, or ija shenai. And since he had lived as both a prince, surrounded by luxury, and a starving ascetic, he knew firsthand that neither of these paths leads to real freedom. They're both useless.
So if total indulgence is out and extreme denial is out, what's left? Well, the Buddha proposes a middle way, this balanced path that just steers clear of both of those extremes. And this is really the heart of his practical advice. Now, this middle way isn't just some vague idea of everything in moderation. It's actually built on a really clear, honest look at reality. And that brings us to the absolute core of his first teaching, the Four Great Truths. You know, you can almost think of this like a doctor's diagnosis. It's super logical. First, you identify the symptom. Suffering exists. Second, you find the cause of that symptom. Third, you figure out the prognosis. Is a cure even possible? And finally, fourth, you prescribe the medicine, the actual path to that cure.
And when the Buddha talks about suffering, he gets really specific. It's not just about the huge, dramatic tragedies in life. It's also that kind of built-in dissatisfaction that we all experience. The pain of being born, of getting old, of getting sick, the sadness of losing people you love, or the frustration of having to be around people you don't. And that constant nagging feeling of just not getting what you want.
Okay, so if life has this baseline of dissatisfaction, what's causing it? Well, this teaching points to one single root cause: craving. The character here is I, and it's described as a thirst, this relentless wanting for things to be different than they are. It's that constant grasping that fuels all our suffering.
But, and this is so important, this is where the whole thing turns. This is not a pessimistic philosophy. The third truth is this huge declaration of hope. Suffering can actually end. It's not permanent. If you can let go of that craving, that thirst, the suffering that it creates just ceases. A cure is possible.
Which of course leads to the big question, right? How? How do you actually do that? How do you end cravings? And that brings us to the fourth truth, the practical how-to guide, the medicine itself. And here's the prescription, the Eightfold Path. This is the middle way in action. It's this whole guide for living that covers everything, from how you see the world, your right view, to how you behave, your right speech and right action, and finally, to the mental training that ties it all together, like right mindfulness and right concentration.
Okay, so let's step back from the teaching for a second and look at what happened the moment the Buddha finished speaking. The impact that the text describes, it isn't subtle, it's cosmic.
So the text says that it wasn't just his human friends who got it. Celestial beings from all over the cosmos understood it too. The number it gives is 8,000 gay of heavenly beings.
Now, a gay is an ancient number, sometimes estimated to be 10 quadrillion. So we're talking about an audience of 80 quintillion beings who got it in that single moment. It's just a way of saying the impact was literally immeasurable.
And it wasn't just the beings that reacted. The entire cosmos did. The text says the 3,000 great thousand worlds all trembled violently. Now, this probably isn't a literal earthquake. It's a way of saying that the very foundation of reality had just shifted. A brand new path to freedom had just been opened up.
And so, with that very first sermon, the wheel that showed up at the beginning had been fully turned. The Dharma, the truth, was set in motion. It was no longer the private knowledge of just one person, but a path that was now open for anyone and everyone to walk.
So that brings it all back to us, right here and now. This teaching isn't just some ancient story. It's a timeless look at how our minds work. And the question this 2,500-year-old text leaves us with is a really personal one. If suffering really does come from all this relentless wanting, what's just one craving that you could start to look at in your own life?